Hey guys, I'm going to go through a slide presentation with you on symbolism. I usually do this a little bit different when we're in class, but I figured this is the best way probably to give you some notes on symbolism, and then we're going to do a little bit of practice at the end. So I'll probably cut this into 2 videos so that way you have time to like stop, after you get done with this one, do something else, and then you can come back to do the practice. So what's symbolism? Basically, it's meaning beyond what's obvious or what's literal. Alright, symbolism is the practice or art of using an object or word to represent an abstract idea. So it can be an action, it can be a person, a place, a word, an object. Any of those things can have symbolic meaning. And when an author wants to suggest a certain tone sometimes, they use symbolism to hint at it rather than blatantly saying, like, this is the tone or whatever. Okay, so, and this is where I'm differing a little bit from what I normally do. A symbol is an object that stands for itself and a greater idea. So we have symbols everywhere, right? Like the arrowhead represents a group of men on a field. It also represents like the idea of the chiefs, and like if you go into the background of how the chiefs were named, it was named after an individual who was a chief in the Mikase tribe of Boy Scouts. Like there's a lot behind that, right? The cross, it means sacrifice. There's a whole history behind the elephant and the donkey, politically speaking, with political cartoons. That's how it got started. We use math symbols. We all know that, subtraction, addition, multiplication, division, among other things. So they all are objects that stand for greater ideas. And these are some other ones, like a heart, in theory, could symbolically mean love. Literally, it's in our bodies, right? When we say we have a broken heart, like it may feel like it's inside, but in reality, it's an idea that you have lost something in one way or another. As another example, symbols can be animals as well. The dove symbolizes peace. There's history behind that as well. Feeling like an ant, like you're small and can be stepped on. Snakes have a symbolic meaning, obviously, but like biblically. Owls being wise. There's all histories behind these things as well. Colors. So what's interesting about colors is their symbolic nature depends on the society that you're living in. For example, in China, when you get married, you wear red. To them, that means purity. But for us, like white means purity. So make sure that you write these down. I'm not going to go over all of them. You can add anything to it. For example, like green, often like is in reference to money. It also can be in reference to greed. With blue, like obviously it's also in reference to depression or sadness. So there's a lot of other things that you can add onto this that I think that might help you. Red, anger, for example. Sometimes red is evil. Okay, so how about in literature? To Kill a Mockingbird, about half of you read that last year. When the object uses it as a deeper meaning, the mockingbird symbolized innocence. Like it brought song, obviously, to life, and it doesn't hurt anyone. And so the whole idea of if you kill a mockingbird, you are taking away something that has done nothing to anyone else. It ends up being a greater symbol in the whole book for Tom Robinson, because he didn't do anything wrong, and like taking down Tom Robinson when it wasn't his fault, is kind of the greater meaning in that whole thing. Often objects are used to symbolize something else. So like one of the things that's really important when you look at symbolism is what are the characteristics of whatever object you're talking about. So a chain, right, is linked together. It's made out of iron, it's tough, and so it can symbolize like coming together of things, but it can also symbolize like because it's in the shape that it's in, like the circular shape, that like you can't escape from it. A lock could mean confinement because you're not allowed out if someone doesn't let you. So you have to look at the aspects of that particular object, the characteristics of it, and how does that work. I'll show you another example of that in a few minutes. Objects as symbols, again, the American flag. It is a real object, right? It symbolizes the United States based on the stars and the stripes represent, you know, our beginnings. But it also, like, the bigger idea is that it represents freedom. You know, that's why we fly it. It represents our nation as a whole in other places. And when it's flown in places where there haven't been freedom, it isn't saying like, oh, here are 50 states and our 13 colonies. It's saying like, we've helped you become free in some way or another. Part of what I mean by providing meaning behind the obvious, or beyond the obvious, is symbolism often emphasizes in literature key ideas or themes. So if there's a river in the story, maybe it's the flow of life because a river flows. Maybe the depths are unknown of the river, and so when they put it in that particular section, the characters are learning things about themselves or are testing the water. The water could be purity, right? Like how clear is the water when they're describing it? Is it murky? Is it hard to see? Is that part of their life hard to see in that flow of life? Are there dangers beneath the surface, depending on that clarity or purity of the water? So you really have to think outside the box when it comes to symbolism. It also can be used to develop the tone of a text. Oftentimes, and you saw this in Lord of the Flies, a storm occurs when there's a conflict or high emotions happening. You rarely see storms occurring when people are just like, happy and everything's good. There's also like a transition often from day to night when we move from goodness to evil. That's a very common thing that happens in literature and movies. And in addition, like the dawn shows the end of a conflict or the start of a new day, a fresh start for someone. And there's usually a calming in the dawn as well. Okay, examples. Another example from literature. Most of you, I think, read Holes in elementary school, or at least seen the movie. Onions are a symbol in Holes. I don't know if you realize that as a sixth grader whenever you read it. Why? So an onion has layers, right? And Sam has, and Stanley and Zero all have their layers. Do they use the onions? Yes. Like Sam uses onions to cure people and help people. Stanley and Zero regain their health. And you know, because of that, they are able to, it moves the plot along because they are able to get better and get out of their situation. It also helps build Sam's character, right? As you see, like, how much he cares about people and how he learns to manipulate his environment to help people. You see those extra layers just like you see of an onion when you peel away things. Another example, Star Wars, I think, is a pretty obvious one. The lightsabers, like good and evil, are represented by the colors. You should have seen that in the video that you watched on movies. I think that's a really good example as well. Lord of the Rings, a ring representing like something continuous, right? Because a ring goes in a circle and doesn't stop. Is the struggle for power of good and evil, and how there will always be that struggle of, you know, circular struggle of good and evil. Sometimes one's on top and sometimes the other is. And those are all the examples I have for you right now for symbolism. Go ahead and take a break. Go back, get anything you need from these slides. And if you have not already watched the Symbolism in Film, please watch that video. And then make sure you take notes on it because it has some additional things that this video I've given you has not covered. And then I will do some breakdown with symbolism with you and a poem called The Sick Rose by William Blake.